You wake up. The light from your screen greets you before the light from the sun. Your hand reaches for the same device, the same scroll, the same routine. You tell yourself that today will be different, that something will shift. But then, before you even finish your morning breath, you find yourself back in the same rhythm, walking the same mental corridors you've walked 1,000 times before. The same thoughts, the same reactions, the same emotions playing on repeat like an old song that never ends. You wonder why change feels so far away when you crave it so deeply. You wonder why, no matter what goals you set or affirmations you whisper, life keeps showing you the same reflections, different faces, same energy, different years, same story. It feels like invisible hands are rearranging the pieces of your life into the same pattern over and over again. You think you're making choices, but something underneath is recycling reality itself. The truth is unsettling and liberating at the same time. You are not trapped in your life. You are trapped in your observation of it. Everything you experience, the emotions that rise, the people you meet, the events that unfold is being filtered through the lens of how you observe existence. That lens doesn't just interpret your world, it creates it. Every second you are not merely watching life. You are selecting one version of it from infinite quantum possibilities. This process happens so fast, so continuously, that it feels automatic. You observe, reality collapses, you react, and the loop begins again. This cycle is what physicists and mystics alike call the observer loop, a repeating feedback between consciousness and creation. You believe you're seeing life, but what you're really doing is generating it through attention and belief. It's like standing in front of a cosmic mirror that doesn't just reflect you, it projects you. The universe is not showing you reality, it's showing you your observation of reality. Each time you wake up, you stare into that mirror and it copies what you expect to see. The reflection becomes identical to yesterday's because your mind silently instructs it to. Imagine waking up tomorrow and instead of thinking, "Here we go again," you paused. For a moment, you withheld your usual observation. You didn't name the day. You didn't label the feelings. You didn't assume anything. You simply existed in pure awareness, like an observer uncommitted to any version of reality. That single pause, the space before thought, before judgment, is where infinite possibilities wait to be born. It's where new timelines can emerge. It's where the copy machine of reality finally stops repeating. But most people never reach that stillness because they're too busy reinforcing the loop with constant observation of the same old story. Your consciousness is a quantum painter. Every brushstroke of attention gives color to your world. Every thought tells the field of infinite possibility what to collapse into form. You believe you're living inside reality, but reality is living inside you, responding to your observation like clay beneath your fingertips. That's why when you observe yourself as limited, your experiences shrink to match that expectation. When you observe your life as dull, your days dim to mirror it. The field takes your perception as an order and fulfills it without hesitation. Now imagine the world as a movie projector. The light of consciousness shines through your lens of beliefs, and what appears on the screen is what you call your life. If you want to change the movie, you don't shout at the screen. You adjust the lens. Yet most of humanity is trapped yelling at the projection, trying to force the picture to change, unaware that they are the ones holding the camera. You've been doing it your entire life, collapsing the same version of reality into being by unconsciously choosing the same frame of observation. The characters might change, but the plot remains identical. The same frustrations, the same lessons, the same emotions dressed in new scenery. This is not because the universe is cruel. It's because the universe is precise. It mirrors your consciousness with absolute accuracy. If you observe through fear, you'll see reasons to be afraid. If you observe through scarcity, you'll meet endless proof of lack. If you observe through wonder, life rushes to meet you with miracles. Every morning is a silent question from the quantum field. Who are you choosing to be today? And every observation you make is your answer. When you looked at your reflection this morning, what did you see? Did you see the same person with the same story, the same limits, the same problems? That was not a reflection, it was a command to the universe. You told the field, collapse this version of me again today. Now imagine if, even for a single morning, you looked into the mirror and saw possibility instead of repetition. You saw potential instead of proof. You saw someone whose life could change completely in a single day. That observation alone would begin rewriting the code of your reality. Because observation is not passive, it's creative. It's the architect of the quantum field. Each moment of attention is like an instruction whispered to existence. Show me this version again. And the universe listens, always. But here's where the trap tightens. Most people don't realize their observation has become mechanical. They see the world through the same emotional frequency every day so consistently that the brain literally wires itself to expect the same outcomes. The nervous system memorizes the energy of another normal day. That becomes the signal it transmits into the quantum field. And so the field obliges. You experience what your energy announces, not what your words request. You can say you want change, but if your observation still vibrates with sameness, the field collapses into the familiar. You stay caught inside your own repetition. A copy of a copy of a copy until you awaken to the mechanism behind it. And when you do, everything begins to shift. Because you are not here to live the same day forever. You are here to remember how to create. The observer loop isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. It's showing you that reality is not something happening to you, it's something happening through you. Every repeated pattern, every echo of the past, every moment that feels like déjà vu is evidence of your creative power at work. The universe is saying, look how consistent you are at generating this frequency. Once you see that, you can begin to redirect it. You can start to observe consciously rather than automatically. That's when you step out of the repetition and into authorship. So let's go deeper. Let's explore the loop itself, the invisible cycle between consciousness and the world it creates. Because only by understanding how the mechanism works can you step beyond it. Chapter 1. The architecture of the loop. Think of consciousness as a field of infinite potential, limitless, undivided, waiting for your observation to give it form. In that field, every possibility already exists. Joy and despair, abundance and lack, freedom and fear. All of it coexists in superposition, just as quantum particles do before they're observed. The moment you look, the moment you think, this is my life, the field collapses into a single experience. That collapse happens countless times per second, weaving together what you perceive as time and continuity. But it's not continuity, it's selection. You are constantly choosing the same frames of existence because your observation remains unchanged. That's the observer loop. Consciousness observes, gives field collapses, gives experience occurs, gives consciousness reacts, gives reaction informs next observation, gives field collapses again. A perfect circle. And like any loop, it repeats until a new instruction enters the system. Until you, the observer, decide to observe differently. Right now, your observation patterns are like a frequency lock. They tune you to a particular version of the world. Your mind keeps scanning for evidence that matches your beliefs, and the field mirrors those expectations flawlessly. You become a vibrational match for your own assumptions. When you think life is hard, you'll find hard situations. When you believe you're overlooked, people seem to ignore you. When you trust that you're guided, synchronicities multiply. The field doesn't discriminate between fear or faith. It simply amplifies observation. This is why awareness is the most powerful force in the universe. Not knowledge, not effort, not even belief awareness, because awareness is observation without attachment. It's the neutral gaze that can see infinite possibilities without collapsing them prematurely. In this state, you become a conscious architect rather than a mechanical participant. You stop reacting to the copies of yesterday and begin authoring the template for tomorrow. But before you can master this art, you must recognize how deeply your current loop is ingrained. Each morning, before a single external event occurs, your brain replays emotional patterns from the past. It reactivates neural pathways that mirror yesterday's energy. Your consciousness instantly aligns with a familiar frequency, and that frequency dictates the type of reality you'll encounter. So even though the world around you changes, new people, new conversations, new moments, the underlying energetic architecture remains identical. The film set updates, but the script stays the same. This is the secret behind the sense of repetition so many people feel. It's not that the universe is static, it's that consciousness keeps choosing the same probabilities over and over. You can spend your entire life inside that repetition and call it destiny. Or you can wake up to what's truly happening and take back authorship. Because every moment offers a hidden portal, the chance to observe differently. And once you step through that portal, once you see observation as creation, reality begins to unfold in ways that defy everything you thought you knew. Chapter 2. The Signal and the Field. Every thought you have, every emotion that moves through you, and every belief you hold sends a subtle vibration into the unseen fabric of reality. You might not hear it, but the universe does. It listens to the hum of your consciousness the way an ocean responds to the moon, rising and falling with every shift in your internal gravity. What most people call coincidence or fate is often nothing more than the field echoing back the exact frequency they're broadcasting. The signal begins long before a thought becomes words. It starts as a vibration, a pulse that leaves your body and interacts with the invisible web of energy connecting everything that exists. You carry this signal with you everywhere. It fills a room before you speak. It shapes how people feel when they stand near you, and it quietly organizes the circumstances of your life. You can change jobs, travel across continents, or start over with new intentions, but unless you change the frequency of your signal, the same reality will rearrange itself around you, wearing different faces but telling the same story. The observer loop thrives on this repetition. It feeds on familiarity. When your emotional signature stays the same, your signal stays the same. And because the universe is perfectly coherent, it reflects your vibration without distortion. What you send out is what you see. You could think of it as the most flawless mirror in existence, one that doesn't show your face but your frequency. People often imagine that creating change means forcing action, making plans, or thinking positively. But if the emotional signal underneath those actions remains incoherent, the field receives a mixed message. It's like trying to play a symphony on an instrument that's out of tune. You might know the notes, but the sound that reaches the world carries tension. In the same way, when your inner world is fragmented, when your thoughts, feelings, and body are pulling in different directions, the universe receives interference. The outcome becomes unpredictable, inconsistent, unstable. But coherence is different. Coherence is the alignment of your inner instruments into one unified vibration. It happens when your heart, mind, and body are all broadcasting the same signal, when your emotions support your thoughts instead of contradicting them. In that state, your observation becomes crystalline. The quantum field doesn't have to guess what you mean. It feels the harmony and responds immediately. Coherence isn't a trick or technique. It's a natural state that emerges when resistance dissolves. It's the calm you feel after finally forgiving someone, or the clarity that arises when you stop fighting what is. In those moments, your energy aligns, and the field mirrors that unity with synchronicities, unexpected opportunities, and an unmistakable sense of flow. You can't fake coherence because the field only responds to authenticity. The secret is that you are already coherent when you stop pretending to be anything other than what you are. The frequency of truth is pure alignment. When you live honestly, when your actions match your inner knowing, when you allow your emotions to move freely instead of suppressing them, your entire signal stabilizes. The observer loop begins to shift. The mirror no longer repeats distortion, it reflects authenticity. Think of your consciousness as light. When scattered, it creates confusion and fragmented realities. But when focused, it becomes a laser that can shape matter. That's what happens when coherence takes hold. You move from being a passive reflector of your past to an active sculptor of possibility. The field you interact with is not somewhere out there. It's woven through you. It's in the space between atoms, in the rhythm of your heartbeat, in the silence between your breaths. Every moment of awareness ripples through it. When you change your internal signal, the field adjusts instantly because there is no distance between the two. You are not a separate observer standing outside of creation. You are the creative consciousness of the field observing itself. This is why emotions are sacred. They are not just feelings, they are frequencies of creation. Joy, gratitude, and wonder carry high coherence. They tune your body to harmony with the universe. Fear, guilt, and shame create fragmentation, sending out scattered signals that collapse into chaotic experiences. You cannot fake joy, but you can reach it by releasing what's blocking it. Every emotion that you allow to move through you instead of trapping it in resistance becomes liberated energy. That energy returns to coherence. Every spiritual teaching across time has pointed to this truth in different language. The kingdom of heaven is within you. As above, so below. What you think, you become. They are all metaphors for coherence. The outer world is the shadow of your inner vibration. You cannot live in a peaceful universe while warring within yourself. The field is neutral. It will always meet you where you vibrate. But here is the paradox that liberates you. The signal is not permanent. It can be rewritten in any moment you choose presence over reaction. When you pause instead of repeating an old emotional pattern, the vibration changes. The universe feels the new rhythm immediately. One moment of genuine awareness carries more creative power than years of unconscious repetition. You've experienced this before, even if you didn't notice. Think of a time when you suddenly felt grateful for something simple: sunlight, breath, silence, and everything around you seemed to glow. That was coherence. The field rearranged itself to match the clarity of your observation. Or remember a moment when your mood dropped and suddenly every small thing started going wrong. The traffic, the delays, the misunderstandings. That was the observer loop reinforcing your signal. The universe does not reward or punish. It reflects and amplifies. And that reflection teaches you about your own frequency. Every repeated experience is feedback, an invitation to observe differently. The field is saying, this is what your vibration looks like right now. Do you want to keep this frequency or tune it higher? When you understand this, life transforms from struggle into communication. Every event becomes a message. Every emotion becomes a guide. The signal you emit becomes your teacher, showing you where your observation is coherent and where it's split. Instead of trying to control outcomes, you start listening to your own frequency. There's a reason why people who cultivate inner peace often experience outer harmony. Their signal no longer oscillates between fear and trust. It vibrates steadily at the level of clarity. This doesn't mean challenges disappear. It means challenges arrive in resonance with growth, not punishment. Their lives flow differently because their observation is consistent. Your consciousness is like a tuning fork. When struck by emotion, it vibrates through the field. Similar frequencies resonate back. Anger attracts situations that echo anger until you notice the sound and change the tune. Peace attracts harmony until you expand into deeper peace. The observer loop is simply the echo chamber of your vibration teaching you through repetition. Once you learn the lesson, the pattern dissolves. There is also a collective signal, a shared vibration created by humanity's combined observation. When enough people hold the same emotional frequency, it generates a field strong enough to influence global experience. This is why collective fear creates turbulence in the world and collective hope ignites movements that transform it. Each individual contributes a note to the symphony of reality. When you tune yourself to coherence, you don't just shift your life, you subtly tune the entire orchestra. The signal and the field are not separate entities. They are one continuous consciousness. When you feel fragmented, you perceive the field as external. But when you align, the illusion of distance fades. You begin to experience the truth that you and existence are extensions of the same awareness. You are the wave and the ocean simultaneously. This is the moment where science and spirituality finally merge. Quantum physics reveals that the observer and the observed are inseparable. The mystic realizes that God and creation are one. Both are describing the same truth through different languages. The field is alive, and you are its voice. When your observation aligns with love, the field sings back in harmony. When your observation vibrates with fear, it mirrors that dissonance until you remember the truth beneath it. The entire journey of awakening is the process of learning how to listen to your own frequency and tune it to resonance with creation itself. Reality is not asking you to believe anything. It's asking you to observe consciously. The difference between struggle and flow is not in what happens, but in how you witness what happens. The quality of your observation determines the rhythm of the field. Imagine for a moment that every heartbeat is a broadcast to the universe saying, "This is what I choose to experience." Would you still fill your mind with worry? Would you still replay the stories that keep you small? Or would you begin to send out a different message, one that says, "I am ready to experience peace. I am ready to experience abundance. I am ready to experience love." The universe doesn't need time to respond. It only needs coherence. The moment your signal becomes clear, the reflection begins to change. Not because reality is far away and needs time to travel, but because reality is you meeting yourself from another angle. That is the essence of the signal in the field. One consciousness vibrating in conversation with itself. The observer is the observed. The mirror is alive. And every time you change the vibration of your signal, the reflection evolves with you. When you finally grasp this truth not as theory, but as direct experience, the world begins to look different. You notice the subtle feedback loops everywhere, the way certain thoughts attract certain emotions, the way certain people mirror your internal state, the way your energy shapes your day before a single word is spoken. You start to see that the field has never been against you. It has only ever been answering you. The more you practice coherent observation, the more sensitive you become to this dialogue. You begin to feel reality as something living, breathing, responsive. You move through the day as both participant and conductor, aware that every glance, every feeling, every breath is part of a symphony that never ends. And slowly, what once felt like repetition transforms into rhythm. What once felt like being trapped becomes a dance. The loop doesn't vanish, you simply learn to lead it. This is the hidden secret of creation. You do not escape the field. You become fluent in it. You stop chasing manifestations and start communicating directly with the energy that shapes them. You speak to reality not with words, but with vibration. When your signal becomes coherent, life becomes luminous. The observer loop transforms from a mirror of habit into a mirror of mastery. And you finally realize that what you called fate was always your own frequency reflected back with perfect precision. Chapter 3. The Emotional Frequency Lock. Some loops do not repeat because you failed to change your mind. They repeat because your body remembers. Beneath your thoughts, beneath your intentions, lives a vibration older than your current self. The stored resonance of every emotion you never allowed to move through you. These memories don't live in the past. They live in your cells, whispering the same frequency into the field day after day. You may wake up with a clear plan for a new life, but the moment your nervous system reactivates its familiar pattern, that plan collapses into yesterday's vibration. The body emits the same energetic code it did before, and the field, obedient and unjudging, responds by replaying the same experiences. This is the emotional frequency lock, the mechanism that anchors you inside repeating realities long after your mind believes it has moved on. Imagine that every emotion is a wave designed to rise, crest, and dissolve. When you resist the rise, when you suppress anger, deny grief, hide fear, or shrink joy, the wave cannot complete its cycle. It freezes. The frozen wave becomes density, an unprocessed current stored inside your energy field. That density vibrates at a lower frequency, sending out a distorted signal that the universe reads as your dominant state. The more emotions you trap, the more the field perceives that distortion as your truth. You do not need to say, "I am afraid." The vibration already says it for you. This is why patterns persist even when logic disagrees. You can tell yourself that you deserve abundance, but if your body is still vibrating with the memory of scarcity, you will unconsciously tune into situations that validate lack. You can say that you want love, but if your nervous system has learned to equate love with pain, it will interpret safety as danger and draw you back to chaos. The field does not listen to your words. It listens to your coherence. Unprocessed emotion is not your enemy. It is simply energy waiting to complete its journey. When you repress it, you trap potential. When you feel it fully, you free energy back into flow. That is the secret to shifting your frequency, not by fighting emotion, but by meeting it so completely that it transforms into power. Every emotion carries a higher octave, grief into compassion, anger into clarity, fear into alert presence, shame into humility. When you allow an emotion to rise and finish, it naturally tunes itself to its higher frequency. But most people never learn this language. Society teaches suppression, not transmutation. From childhood, you are trained to hide tears, to replace pain with distraction, to avoid silence because silence reveals what still hurts. Over years, this becomes a pattern of emotional avoidance so ingrained that it feels like personality. Yet beneath the performance, the body is still speaking the same old vibration, repeating it into the field until you choose to listen. The process of unlocking emotion is not intellectual. You cannot think your way out of a vibration. It requires presence, a deep willingness to feel without naming, to observe without controlling. When emotion arises, don't analyze it. Notice where it lives in the body. Breathe into that space. Feel the texture of the sensation without story or justification. As you do, you'll sense movement, a warmth, a tremble, a soft release. That is energy dissolving back into coherence. The signal clears. The field responds. Every time you do this, you rewrite the emotional memory that was keeping you in the loop. You tell your body that it is safe to feel again, and safety changes everything. When the body feels safe, it no longer clings to the past. It stops projecting threat onto the future. It opens to possibility. Think of your nervous system as an instrument constantly playing background music to your life. If that instrument has been tuned to the key of fear, the melody of reality will always carry tension. But once you tune it to trust, the melody changes immediately. The same world, the same people, the same circumstances sound different because you are listening from a new frequency. Some people call this healing, but it's really frequency alignment. Healing implies something was broken. Alignment recognizes that the energy was simply out of tune. When emotion completes its cycle, the tune resolves, and you return to your natural state of coherence. To see this clearly, observe how emotion governs perception. When you're angry, your awareness narrows. You only notice evidence that sustains your anger. When you're grateful, your vision widens. You notice details you missed before: light, kindness, beauty. The emotion you feel becomes the filter of what reality you collapse. It's not that the world changed. Your frequency of observation changed, and so did your reality. Now imagine that every trapped emotion acts as a lens, bending the light of consciousness. A field of pure possibility shines through you, but each frozen feeling refracts that light into distorted patterns. You perceive limitation, not because reality is limited, but because your emotional lens still carries the residue of old pain. Remove the residue, and the light flows unobstructed. This is the work of liberation, not escaping the loop, but clearing the distortions that make the loop necessary. Every repeating pattern in your life exists to reveal a trapped frequency. It keeps returning not to punish you, but to show you where energy is waiting to be released. The relationship that keeps echoing, the circumstance that keeps repeating, the emotion that won't go away, they are all invitations to integrate the energy behind them. When you finally meet that energy with compassion instead of resistance, it transforms instantly. What you feared as pain reveals itself as stored vitality. What you avoided as darkness turns out to be condensed light. The universe has been trying to return this energy to you all along, but it needed your permission to flow again. This is why people describe breakthroughs as lightness. They are not metaphorically lighter, they are literally vibrating at a higher frequency because density has dissolved. Their signal clears, their coherence strengthens, and new realities begin to mirror that shift. If you could see this from the quantum field's perspective, it would look like a recalibration of light. Each time you release an old emotional frequency, your personal energy field brightens. The geometry of your aura changes. The field around you reorganizes to reflect the new pattern. Life begins to feel synchronistic again because it is once more responding to a signal unblocked by emotional debris. The emotional frequency lock is powerful, but it is not permanent. The key to releasing it is radical presence, the kind of awareness that feels like love without object. Presence does not analyze, it allows. It doesn't try to fix, it listens. When you meet emotion this way, you speak the same language as the field. You return to resonance. Over time, this becomes a way of living. You begin to sense emotions not as enemies but as signals. You feel the shift in your body the moment your frequency dips and adjusts before the field even has time to mirror it. You learn that every sensation, even discomfort, is sacred information. Life becomes an intimate conversation between your consciousness and the infinite intelligence surrounding you. Eventually, the concept of healing fades, replaced by mastery. You no longer ask, "How do I stop repeating this?" But "What is this teaching me about my vibration?" The observer loop becomes a feedback system, an instrument for awakening. Each echo of the past becomes an opportunity to tune yourself with greater precision. In this state, emotion no longer locks you into the past. It becomes fuel for creation. Every feeling, when embraced consciously, transforms into momentum. Anger becomes courage, fear becomes alertness, sadness becomes empathy. These new frequencies ripple outward, shaping timelines that vibrate with empowerment instead of contraction. As your emotional field clears, your sensitivity increases. You begin to perceive subtler layers of reality, intuitive nudges, energetic shifts, the gentle pull of synchronicity guiding your path. This is not fantasy, it's coherence in action. The less noise inside your system, the more clearly you hear the field's response. Soon you realize that reality was never repeating you out of cruelty. It was synchronizing to your unhealed energy out of precision. The universe is a compassionate mirror. It cannot lie, and it cannot distort. It shows you exactly what you are vibrating so that you can remember what you are capable of. Once you understand this, gratitude replaces frustration. Every repeating loop becomes a gift, a coded message pointing to freedom. You begin to thank the pattern even as you dissolve it. The field hears that gratitude and amplifies it, multiplying coherence. The more grateful you are for your lessons, the faster the loop transforms into new expression. At a certain point, the emotional frequency lock loses its grip completely. You find yourself responding to life instead of reacting to it. Emotion still moves through you, but it does not define you. It arrives, teaches, and leaves. Your nervous system learns that presence is safety. The body stops clinging. Energy flows without resistance. In this state, observation becomes effortless. You no longer try to create from mental effort or forced visualization. You simply maintain coherence. You trust that the field will echo whatever frequency you embody. And it does, instantly, precisely, lovingly. That is the moment you realize freedom was never about escaping the loop. It was about feeling everything within it until nothing remained frozen. The emotional frequency lock was never a curse. It was an invitation to remember that energy is eternal and love is its natural vibration. When your heart becomes transparent, when your emotions are allowed to move without fear, you emit a signal so pure that reality itself rearranges to meet it. The same life that once felt repetitive now feels alive with synchronicity. The same world that once mirrored your pain now reflects your coherence. The observer loop hasn't disappeared. It's simply aligned with love. And from that alignment, the next stage of evolution begins. Chapter 4. The Quantum Recalibration, How Identity Shifts Create New Timelines. Every reality you've ever experienced was filtered through a single question. One you may have never spoken aloud: who am I in this moment? That question is the root code of your existence. It determines not just what you see, but what kind of world you're capable of seeing. Identity is not merely the story you tell about yourself. It's the vibrational signature through which the quantum field organizes your reality. Most people believe they are trying to change their life, but in truth, they are trying to change their world while keeping the same self intact. They alter circumstances, jobs, partners, and routines, yet remain energetically identical to who they were before. The field receives the same signal and simply reconfigures familiar versions of reality. That's why people often find themselves in different situations that feel hauntingly similar. The stage changes, but the actor stays the same. To create true transformation, you must go deeper than behavior or thought. You must enter the layer beneath emotion, beneath memory, the layer where identity resides. This is the level where reality recalibrates itself. It is where new timelines are born. Identity acts as the stabilizer of the observer loop. It keeps the universe coherent around the version of you that you believe yourself to be. The moment you say, "I am this kind of person," the field aligns accordingly. It rearranges probabilities to confirm that statement. You meet people who treat you the way you expect to be treated. You attract opportunities that match what you think you deserve. You perceive evidence that supports your self-definition because the field cannot contradict the vibration of the observer. This is why identity changes feel like death. When you outgrow an old version of yourself, the energetic architecture of that self begins to dissolve. The body resists. The mind protests. You feel disoriented, detached, uncertain. What's really happening is that your consciousness is shifting frequency, and the universe is recalibrating around your new signal. You are literally stepping out of one timeline and entering another. If you could see this process from the outside, it would look like countless threads of possibility rearranging themselves in response to a new center of gravity. The version of reality that matched your old identity fades as a new probability field begins to stabilize. In this transitional phase, known in mystical traditions as the void, both versions may overlap, the old self trying to survive and the new self not yet fully embodied. This is where most people retreat, confusing uncertainty for danger. But uncertainty is simply the field reorganizing. It's the silence between songs when a new melody is about to begin. Your willingness to remain present in that silence determines how completely your identity can shift. The deeper your surrender, the faster the recalibration. This is not about forcing belief, it's about relaxing into truth. Every new identity already exists as a frequency in the field. You don't create it from scratch. You tune into it. Think of identity as a radio station transmitting specific patterns of consciousness. Each frequency corresponds to a version of reality. The version of you who struggles broadcasts on one frequency, while the version of you who thrives exists on another. Both are available at all times. The difference is what you are tuned to through self-perception. When you say, "I am free," you begin to vibrate at the frequency of freedom. The field starts to organize itself to support that vibration. Circumstances, people, and ideas appear that match it. But if underneath those words the old identity still hums, "I am trapped," the field receives interference. It cannot stabilize the new timeline until the signal becomes coherent. This is why deep transformation demands emotional honesty. You cannot calibrate to a new reality while secretly resonating with the old one. To recalibrate identity, you must learn to observe yourself as fluid rather than fixed. The moment you treat identity as temporary expression instead of permanent truth, you unlock the ability to move across timelines consciously. You realize that who you are is not a noun but a verb, a continuous act of observation shaping the quantum field. In this understanding, transformation becomes an art form. You stop trying to fix yourself and start exploring which versions of self you wish to experience. You can feel the difference between the vibration of lack and the vibration of abundance, the vibration of control and that of surrender. When you shift your attention to the version of you already living in alignment, the field instantly responds. Not symbolically, literally. The body might take time to adjust because it's catching up to the new signal, but the field has already changed. This is why after powerful realizations, people often experience strange coincidences. Meeting someone out of nowhere, receiving sudden opportunities, or sensing reality rearranging in subtle ways. These are not coincidences. They are markers of recalibration. However, the old identity rarely disappears quietly. It's an echo, a memory still vibrating inside your energy field. It will try to pull you back with familiar emotions, guilt, doubt, nostalgia, fear. These are not setbacks. They are the gravitational pull of the old timeline trying to maintain coherence. The key is not to fight the echo, but to observe it without merging with it. When you witness those emotions as old data rather than current truth, they dissolve. The observer stops feeding energy into the outdated frequency, and the echo fades into silence. That silence is spaciousness, the birth of a new version of you. This is the essence of quantum recalibration. Your inner frequency shifts first, and then reality reorganizes to match. The process is instantaneous at the level of energy, gradual at the level of form. The more consistently you maintain coherence with the new identity, the faster physical reality aligns. Some call this manifestation, but that word doesn't capture its depth. Manifestation implies bringing something external into existence. Quantum recalibration is remembering that everything already exists and simply selecting which version you wish to experience. The field is an infinite archive of potential selves, each surrounded by corresponding realities. You travel between them by changing your self-definition. The ancient mystics described this as death and rebirth. The scientist calls it decoherence and reconfiguration. The truth is the same. Consciousness collapses one probability wave and opens another. To the degree that you release attachment to the old identity, you allow the new pattern to stabilize. It takes courage to die before death, to let go of familiar limitations and trust the invisible. But that surrender is the portal through which new worlds appear. Each time you let an identity dissolve, the field expands. You discover parts of yourself that had been hidden under the weight of definition. You realize that your essence has never changed. Only the forms it expresses have shifted. This realization births profound humility. You begin to see every person as a mirror of potential selves. Instead of judging others, you observe them as reflections of frequencies you could also embody. Compassion arises naturally because you understand that all consciousness is one field playing infinite roles in its own awakening. As identity continues to recalibrate, even the concept of me versus world begins to fade. You start to feel reality from the inside rather than observing it from the outside. The separation between observer and observed dissolves. There is only awareness moving within itself, sometimes appearing as you, sometimes as circumstance, always as consciousness learning its own capacity. At this level of perception, the observer loop becomes transparent. You see the mechanism operating in real time, how thought crystallizes into matter, how emotion bends probability, how intention rearranges the geometry of experience. Life turns into lucid dreaming while awake. This doesn't mean you control everything. Control belongs to the old paradigm. It means you co-create deliberately, aligning intention with trust. You don't need to predict outcomes because you understand that coherence ensures harmony. The field knows what you need before the mind can articulate it. The more you live from this alignment, the more effortless creation becomes. Desire loses its desperation. Action becomes expression rather than compensation. Relationships transform into mirrors of shared consciousness rather than sources of validation. Work turns into play because you are no longer performing an identity, you are exploring existence. The quantum recalibration is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing dance between your expanding awareness and the infinite field responding to it. Each new identity you embody refines your frequency, making you capable of perceiving even subtler dimensions of reality. Eventually, you realize that awakening itself is the only true identity, consciousness aware of its own infinite capacity to become. And yet, even within that realization, the loop continues, not as a trap, but as a canvas. You are still the observer, still collapsing potential into form, but now you do it consciously, playfully, lovingly. The repetition remains, but it's the rhythm of creation rather than the echo of conditioning. This is the art of quantum living, identity as improvisation, observation as artistry, reality as reflection. Each moment becomes an opportunity to recalibrate your frequency and witness the universe respond in perfect symmetry. When you live from that understanding, every breath feels like a choice. Every glance becomes sacred. Every experience reveals itself as collaboration between your consciousness and the infinite field that has been waiting, patiently, to show you how vast you truly are. And somewhere beyond the stillness that follows, a new identity waits, one that no longer asks, "Who am I?" but whispers, "I am." Chapter 5. The Mirror Paradox: How Reality Reflects Consciousness in Infinite Ways. Everything you experience is a mirror. Every conversation, every coincidence, every triumph, and every challenge is consciousness observing itself from a different angle. The universe doesn't send random events, it sends reflections. What you call reality is not something happening outside of you. It's the infinite field mirroring your vibration with absolute precision. This is the mirror paradox, the realization that life is not reacting to you, it's reflecting you. Every face you see, every moment that unfolds, is your own awareness expressing itself in form. The paradox lies in how real it all feels, how convincing the illusion of separation appears. and yet how intimately it all responds the instant your perception shifts. You have lived inside mirrors since the moment you became self-aware. As a child, you looked into your parents' eyes and learned who you were through their reactions. Their expressions, their energy, their words became the first reflection of identity. Over time, those reflections solidified into belief. I am loved. I am not enough. I am safe. I am invisible. The world around you kept reflecting those inner conclusions, and the loop began. The reflection became the proof, and the proof reinforced the reflection. Every person you meet continues that teaching, consciously or not. The friend who inspires you is showing you a part of yourself you've forgotten. The critic who engages you is revealing a wound that still asks for integration. The stranger who feels familiar is reminding you of a frequency you've embodied before. Life constantly whispers, "This is you. This is you. This is you." But most people don't recognize the message. They react to the reflection as if it's separate, as if the mirror has power over them. When the reflection shows beauty, they feel worthy. When it shows pain, they feel punished. They forget that the mirror has no opinion. It cannot lie, but it cannot comfort either. It only reveals what is being projected through it. Understanding this changes everything. Once you realize that reality is an infinite mirror, you stop fighting with reflections and start communicating through them. You learn to look at circumstances not as judgments, but as information. You begin to ask, what part of my consciousness is this moment showing me? The question itself breaks the illusion of victimhood and returns you to authorship. The mirror paradox also explains why certain lessons repeat until they are integrated. The universe is not testing you. It's giving you another chance to recognize yourself. Each time a pattern reappears, it arrives with a slightly different angle, a new opportunity to see beyond the surface. When you finally perceive the lesson behind the reflection, the pattern dissolves instantly because the field no longer needs to mirror it. Awareness ends repetition. There is a subtle beauty in this system. It means nothing in your life is wasted. Even the most painful experiences serve a purpose. They are mirrors polished by friction, designed to reveal what is still unconscious. When you meet pain with awareness instead of resistance, the mirror transforms. The same situation that once triggered suffering becomes a revelation of strength. The same reflection that once wounded you becomes the teacher that awakens you. The most advanced mirrors are relationships. No other arena exposes your frequency more clearly than human connection. The people closest to you are quantum instruments tuned to your vibration. They amplify your light and your shadow with equal precision. That's why relationships can feel so intense. They magnify the frequencies you're ready to integrate. If you feel unseen, it's usually because you're hiding a part of yourself. If you feel judged, it's because you're still judging that aspect within. The moment you integrate what you projected, the reflection changes. The same person can behave differently simply because your observation of them has changed. You shifted frequency, and the mirror adjusted. There's a saying among mystics, the universe speaks to itself through feedback. Every encounter is feedback. The traffic that tests your patience, the friend who mirrors your generosity, the challenge that pushes you beyond fear. Reality speaks through resonance, not words. The more coherent your signal, the clearer the conversation becomes. Eventually, you start to sense the mirrors even before they appear. You feel the shift in your vibration and know that reality will soon echo it. This is where mastery begins. You don't wait for reflections to teach you. You learn directly from your energy. You adjust your frequency internally, and the mirrors update automatically. But the paradox goes even deeper. If reality mirrors you perfectly, then every reflection is also you helping yourself awaken. That means every person, every event, even those you once labeled as negative, is your own consciousness playing a role in your expansion. Life becomes a grand collaboration between countless versions of self, all synchronized to accelerate awareness. Once this understanding anchors, judgment dissolves. You stop blaming others for your experiences because you see them as co-creators acting out the vibration you share. Compassion arises naturally. Forgiveness becomes effortless. You realize that love is not moral virtue, it's simply accurate perception. Love sees everything as itself. The mirror paradox also reveals a subtle danger, identifying too strongly with the reflection. Many people chase validation through mirrors, seeking approval or success as proof of worth. But every time you define yourself by an external reflection, you hand your power to the mirror. The moment it changes, your sense of self collapses. To live free, you must anchor your identity not in what the mirror shows but in the awareness that's doing the observing. That awareness is unchanging. It existed before the reflection and will exist after. It's the stillness behind the movement, the screen behind the movie, the silence between sounds. When you rest there, reality stops feeling personal. The mirrors still move, but they no longer control you. You can engage with them fully, love, create, express, without forgetting that they are all part of one infinite consciousness observing itself. At this depth, even time becomes a mirror. The past and future are not linear. They are reflective dimensions responding to your present frequency. When you heal a vibration now, you change the reflection of both past and future timelines. Memories reorganize, emotions release, probabilities shift. This is why deep transformation feels like rewriting your entire history. You are not changing what happened. You are changing the observer who experienced it. The mirror of time updates instantly. You begin to see how synchronicity works through this principle. Every coincidence is the universe winking at you through reflection. The moment your internal vibration matches a higher frequency, the field rearranges itself to show you confirmation. A word on a billboard, a song on the radio, a chance meeting, these are not random. They are mirrors responding to the new signal. The more aware you become, the faster the reflections align. At a certain level of coherence, the boundary between inner and outer dissolves completely. You think of someone, and they message you. You intend an opportunity, and it arrives before you finish planning. The delay between vibration and reflection disappears. This is not supernatural, it's synchronization at light speed. When observation is pure, the mirror responds instantly because there is no resistance between the observer and the observed. Living in this state feels like lucid dreaming while awake. You move through a world that feels alive, responsive, intimate. You no longer chase reflections, you converse with them. You no longer fear challenges. You read them as energetic signals guiding you toward alignment. Life becomes a dialogue between frequencies rather than a struggle against fate. The mirror paradox invites profound humility because it eliminates the illusion of control. You realize that every reflection is both you and beyond you, a vast intelligence orchestrating infinite symmetries. You are a cell in the body of consciousness, and every other being is too. The reflection you see in another's eyes is the same awareness peering back at itself. This is the highest understanding of the observer loop. Not just that observation creates reality, but that reality itself is the observation of unity pretending to be many. Every mirror, every particle, every breath is consciousness looking into its own infinite face. The dance of creation is simply awareness exploring all the ways it can see itself. When you truly see this, gratitude floods your system. You realize you were never trapped by the mirror, you were learning to recognize yourself within it. Every reflection, even the painful ones, was love in disguise. The universe was never punishing you. It was showing you where you had forgotten your own light. And now that you remember, the mirrors begin to shimmer differently. They no longer repeat the old stories. They shimmer with invitation. Every moment whispers, What version of yourself will you choose to see now? You smile because you finally understand. The mirror isn't outside. It never was. Chapter 6. The collapse of duality when the observer becomes the observed. There is a moment in every awakening when the mirror shatters. You no longer feel like a separate self looking out at a world, but like awareness experiencing itself from within. The boundaries between the observer and the observed begin to dissolve. The space between me and everything else thins until it feels like light passing through light. This is the collapse of duality, the realization that the observer and reality have never been two. In the early stages of consciousness, duality is necessary. It gives shape to existence. Without contrast, there would be no experience. Without separation, no recognition of love or meaning. The world was built as a reflection of polarity, light and shadow, self and other, birth and death, all dancing to create the illusion of distance so consciousness could witness itself. But illusions, no matter how convincing, are destined to be seen through. You start noticing it in small ways first. You meditate, and suddenly the gap between thought and awareness widens. The mind speaks, but something deeper is listening. You feel emotion rise, but instead of drowning in it, you observe it as energy moving through you. You begin to realize that you are not the thoughts, not the feelings, not even the body. You are the space in which all of it occurs. And then, one day, the space itself begins to feel alive, aware, intimate. You sense the same stillness inside you pulsing through everything you see, the wind, the sound of footsteps, the hum of electricity, the beating heart of someone nearby. The inside and the outside merge. That moment changes everything. Reality becomes seamless. You are no longer looking at life, you are being life. The trees are breathing with you. The stars are watching through your eyes. Every atom around you feels personal because it is. There is no border between consciousness and creation. Observation collapses into participation. Quantum physics hints at this truth through the phenomenon of entanglement. Two particles, once connected, continue to affect each other instantly across vast distances. It suggests that separation is not fundamental, connection is. The mystic experiences this not as theory but as reality. They feel the pulse of the universe as their own heartbeat. Entanglement is not just between particles. It's between all expressions of consciousness. When the illusion of duality collapses, your perception of time also shifts. The linear sequence of past, present, and future folds into one living continuum. You begin to sense that everything is happening simultaneously within the eternal now, the only true moment that ever exists. What you call past is simply a reflection you're observing from a specific angle of awareness. What you call future is another potential reflection waiting for attention. The observer and the timeline co-create each other in real time. This realization is both liberating and humbling. You understand that every being you meet is another version of yourself exploring consciousness through a different lens. Their joy is your joy. Their pain is your pain. The universe stops feeling like a stage full of separate actors and starts to feel like a single organism learning to see itself from infinite perspectives. But collapsing duality is not an escape from humanity. It's an embrace of it. Enlightenment is not floating above the world in constant bliss. It's seeing divinity in the ordinary, unity in the mundane. The sound of rain, the laughter of strangers, the ache in your chest, they all become sacred because they are all facets of the same consciousness. When duality dissolves, judgment loses its meaning. Nothing is higher or lower, better or worse, only different notes in one endless song. At this stage, you stop trying to fix reality. You no longer seek perfection because you see that the universe is already whole. Every imperfection was a necessary shadow to reveal the light behind it. The suffering that once seemed cruel now feels like an intricate lesson in awareness. You realize that even pain was consciousness calling itself home. The ego, which once felt like the author of your life, softens. It becomes a tool rather than a master, a temporary interface for playing in form. You don't destroy the ego. You integrate it. You honor it for its role in giving shape to experience. Without it, you could not taste individuality, create art, or speak these words. The difference is that now you know it's not who you are. It's a costume worn by infinity. When the observer merges with the observed, creation turns playful. Manifestation no longer feels like effort or ritual. You don't visualize outcomes to get what you want. You tune into frequencies because you enjoy the dance of creation. Desire transforms into curiosity. You wonder what reality will look like when you vibrate as peace, as love, as joy, not because you need proof, but because expression is the joy of being. This is what ancient mystics meant by divine play, the recognition that the universe is a living work of art painting itself endlessly through you. You are both the artist and the canvas. The painting changes not because you demand it, but because creation cannot stop expanding. Consciousness evolves through experience, and you are one of its brushstrokes. In this state, presence becomes effortless. You stop chasing the next moment because you see that every moment contains eternity. There is nowhere else to be. The observer loop still exists, but its purpose changes. It's no longer a cycle of repetition. It's a rhythm of exploration. Observation becomes a creative pulse, each moment a fresh expression of infinite potential. You start to understand what true surrender means. It's not resignation or passivity. It's the dissolving of resistance between the observer and life itself. You no longer ask the universe for guarantees because you are the universe inquiring into itself. Trust becomes your natural state. Whatever happens, you know it's happening as you, not to you. In this space, even death loses its grip. You feel that consciousness cannot end. It can only change form. The fear of losing identity dissolves into the recognition that identity was always temporary. You have died countless times in every forgotten dream, in every version of yourself that faded, yet awareness remained untouched. That awareness is who you truly are, and it is immortal. From this perspective, you begin to experience compassion on a level beyond emotion. It's no longer something you feel for others. It's something you are. Compassion arises naturally because you can no longer perceive separation. When someone suffers, part of you moves toward them instinctively as one limb moves to soothe another. The impulse to heal becomes as natural as breathing. The collapse of duality doesn't erase individuality. It refines it. You still express as a unique pattern of consciousness, but now you know the pattern is fluid, interconnected with all others. You act from inspiration rather than obligation, from authenticity rather than fear. Creativity flows through you without effort because resistance has nowhere to anchor. This is the state that saints, poets, and scientists have all pointed toward, the moment when awareness recognizes itself in all directions. Some call it enlightenment. Others call it coherence. In truth, it's simply reality unfiltered. The dreamer has awakened inside the dream, and the dream has realized it was never separate from the dreamer. When you reach this understanding, the concept of progress becomes obsolete. There is nothing to reach because you are already the destination. You no longer measure growth by achievement, but by depth of presence. Every breath becomes an expression of the infinite recognizing itself. From here, the observer loop becomes transparent and luminous. It still cycles, but each rotation reveals new shades of the same oneness. You see patterns not as traps but as mandalas, intricate geometries of energy expressing the eternal in temporal form. The mirror no longer repeats. It radiates. This is the ultimate paradox. By dissolving the boundary between observer and observed, you don't lose individuality, you discover its divine purpose. You realize that the universe needed you in your exact form to experience this precise angle of itself. Your eyes, your voice, your life are unique instruments through which infinity explores its own reflection. To live in this awareness is to live as harmony. There is no longer a you seeking peace. There is only peace expressing as you. Reality doesn't need to change for you to feel whole because wholeness is what you are. And when you walk through the world with that recognition, when you look into another's eyes and see your own awareness shining back, you finally understand what the entire observer loop was trying to teach all along. That there was never anything to fix, never anything to escape, only consciousness remembering itself through the beauty of form. Chapter 7. Quantum Harmony, Living as the Flow of Creation. When the illusion of separation fades, life no longer feels like something to manage. You begin to sense that existence has always been intelligent, that every breath, thought, and movement is already part of an intricate orchestration too vast to control, but too intimate to ever leave you out. What once felt random begins to reveal pattern. What once felt chaotic begins to reveal rhythm. This is quantum harmony, the realization that creation itself is not happening around you, it is happening through you. Harmony is not the absence of contrast. It's the awareness that contrast is music. The ups and downs of your life are the rising and falling notes of consciousness composing itself in time. When you live aligned with that awareness, even challenges become symphonic. You no longer resist the minor chords because you can hear how they resolve into beauty. The mind that once called certain moments good and others bad starts to recognize the perfection in every variation of experience. This understanding transforms how you move through the world. You stop trying to make life happen and start allowing life to happen through you. Effort becomes flow, not because you stop acting, but because action becomes synchronized with awareness. Decisions that once felt heavy become obvious. Opportunities appear at the exact moment they're needed. You realize that when you live in coherence with the quantum field, timing itself rearranges to support you. In quantum harmony, intuition becomes the primary language of creation. It speaks not in words but in impulses, the soft pull toward a place, the sudden inspiration to call someone, the quiet nudge that says, "Wait here a little longer." These are not random thoughts. They are communications from the field. The more you trust them, the clearer they become. The universe stops feeling distant and begins to feel conversational. You think, it responds. You feel, it reflects. You observe, it unfolds. Living this way doesn't mean that everything becomes effortless in the conventional sense. It means that effort and ease no longer oppose each other. They fuse into participation. When you act, you do so from presence, not from fear. When you rest, you do so without guilt. You recognize that both motion and stillness serve the same intelligence. The universe breathes through both the inhale of creation and the exhale of surrender. This balance is what ancient teachers called the middle path, the state between striving and passivity, between control and chaos. You are no longer a separate entity trying to win against circumstance. You are awareness moving in rhythm with the greater symphony of existence. In that rhythm, everything you need comes exactly when it's required, not because of luck, but because coherence ensures precision. The science of this harmony lies in resonance. Every system in nature seeks equilibrium. When two vibrations meet, the weaker one entrains to the stronger until both move as one. The same happens between you and the universe. When your frequency stabilizes in love, gratitude, and clarity, the chaotic vibrations around you begin to harmonize. People feel calmer in your presence. Circumstances start aligning without struggle. Your coherence becomes a stabilizing force within the field. You don't have to preach or persuade. Your vibration does the speaking. A single coherent being can shift an entire room because harmony is contagious. It's how the heart synchronizes with music, how crowds sway in unison, how shared intention can change the mood of a place. Consciousness seeks harmony by design. When you live as coherence, you become a tuning fork for the world. In this state, creation feels less like effort and more like dance. You begin to notice subtle currents of energy moving through every experience, invisible rivers guiding your choices, coincidences linking one moment to the next. You follow these currents not because you know where they lead, but because you trust their intelligence. They've been guiding you since the beginning, but only now do you have the sensitivity to feel them. The more you live in harmony, the more time dissolves as a source of pressure. You stop chasing the future because you can feel that the future is already contained in the present. Every seed of possibility is encoded in the now. When you align with the energy of the moment fully, the next step reveals itself naturally. You no longer manifest by projecting into tomorrow. You manifest by expressing truth today. Quantum harmony is the mature phase of creation. Early on, manifestation feels like manipulation, trying to bend reality to the will of desire. But in harmony, manifestation becomes participation. You no longer say, "I want this to happen." You say, "I am ready to experience what is already aligned with me." The difference is subtle but profound. One approach stems from separation, the other from unity. When you live in this flow, even language changes meaning. Words like miracle and synchronicity stop feeling extraordinary. They become normal, the natural consequence of coherence. You begin to expect alignment the way you expect the sun to rise. The universe's precision ceases to surprise you because you understand that it was never unpredictable. It was only your perception that was untrained. In quantum harmony, gratitude becomes your default frequency. You don't practice it as a ritual. It arises automatically because you see how intricately everything fits together. Every coincidence, every delay, every encounter reveals itself as part of a perfectly timed unfolding. Even when the mind doesn't understand, the heart feels the rhythm underneath. You start to notice that reality adjusts faster now. The lag between observation and reflection shortens because there's no resistance left to slow it down. You think peace, and peace manifests around you. You feel joy, and people smile when you enter the room. The field mirrors your vibration instantly because your signal is clean. This is what the ancients meant by alignment with divine will, not obedience to an external God, but resonance with the creative intelligence of the cosmos. This harmony is not static, it breathes. Some days feel expansive, others quiet. Some moments surge with energy, others invite stillness. But through it all, the underlying awareness remains steady. You stop chasing highs and avoiding lows. You move through them as waves in one continuous ocean. Every crest is celebration, every trough is rest. When you live as the flow of creation, even identity becomes fluid. You can feel yourself shifting roles effortlessly, teacher and student, leader and listener, giver and receiver, without attachment to any of them. You realize that harmony doesn't require choosing one note. It requires hearing how every note contributes to the symphony. You let life play through you rather than trying to conduct the orchestra. In this state, compassion deepens. You no longer see people as separate stories, but as melodies blending into the greater composition. Even those who appear lost are essential notes in the song of awakening. You understand that discord is not the opposite of harmony. It's the friction that creates evolution. Every imbalance in the world is an unresolved chord seeking resolution through awareness. And awareness, your awareness, is the tuning key. You begin to live with a gentle reverence for everything. The small details of existence take on a luminous quality. The way sunlight touches water, the way laughter echoes in a hallway, the stillness before sleep, all of it feels sacred because all of it vibrates with the same intelligence. The world no longer feels like something to conquer or survive. It feels like art, and you are both artist and witness. Quantum harmony also changes how you relate to others. You stop trying to fix or save them. You understand that every consciousness moves toward coherence in its own rhythm. Your role is not to pull anyone forward, but to hold your vibration steady so they can feel their own. When you live in resonance, you silently give permission for others to remember their alignment. Your coherence speaks louder than any advice. This is what true leadership looks like in the quantum sense. Not control, not dominance, but frequency stability. You become a calm center around which chaos finds order. Even when others project fear, your vibration doesn't waver. You meet dissonance with presence, and presence restores harmony. This is how change ripples through the world, not through force, but through resonance. As you live deeper in this flow, something remarkable happens. The desire to separate spiritual life from daily life disappears. Every act becomes sacred. Making a meal, sending a message, walking down a street, all are forms of meditation because you are fully present. The boundaries between the mystical and the mundane vanish. Existence itself becomes prayer. Quantum harmony is the natural culmination of the observer loop. You began trapped in repetition, believing life was happening to you. You learned that observation creates reality, that emotion tunes frequency, that identity shapes timelines, and that every reflection is your own consciousness in disguise. Now you arrive here, where everything moves together, the observer and the observed, the signal and the field, all pulsing as one rhythmic intelligence. In this awareness, creation never feels mechanical again. It feels alive, musical, spontaneous. You are no longer trying to escape the loop. You are playing within it, improvising new melodies in every breath. The universe listens and answers instantly because it is not separate from you. This is the freedom hidden at the heart of existence, not power over reality, but harmony with it. To live in that harmony is to remember that you were never outside the flow. You were always the river learning to recognize its own current. And as you rest in that knowing, you realize something extraordinary: the flow never ends. It continues, infinite and eternal, carrying you from one expression of consciousness to the next, one creation to another, forever exploring, forever expanding, forever home. Chapter 8. Infinite Resonance, the Eternal Dance of Conscious Creation. There comes a moment when the journey of awakening stops feeling like a journey at all. You no longer see yourself as moving toward enlightenment, success, or completion. You feel instead that you have entered an infinite dance, one without beginning or end, without destination or finish line. This is infinite resonance, the state where creation, observation, and awareness merge into one continuous rhythm of existence. In this space, you sense that every vibration you emit ripples across eternity. Nothing is lost, nothing is wasted. Every breath sends a wave through the ocean of the quantum field, and that wave touches every other wave. You are not a drop in the sea of existence. You are the sea in a single drop, endlessly communicating with itself. At this level, you understand why ancient mystics described the universe as sound, as vibration, as sacred music. Existence hums. Every atom sings its note in the grand harmony of being. The galaxies move like spiraling melodies, planets orbit like rhythm, and your heart beats in time with all of it. The universe doesn't move randomly, it dances. And you, the conscious observer, are not just watching, you are part of the choreography. When you live in infinite resonance, you stop separating creation from creator. You feel both at once. Every thought, every emotion, every choice is a brushstroke of the infinite painting itself through you. The painter and the canvas are inseparable. The art is never finished because creation is continuous, expanding outward in ever-evolving expressions of awareness. This realization dissolves the last remnants of striving. You stop trying to reach perfect balance because balance itself is fluid. Even harmony vibrates, It moves between tension and release, silence and sound. The idea of a static state of peace fades, replaced by a living peace that breathes, grows, and changes shape. You no longer crave permanence because you can feel that movement is sacred. Every vibration you emit is answered instantly. You smile, and the world smiles back. You judge, and judgment echoes through your experience until you replace it with understanding. You think of someone, and they appear in your life or your mind moments later. The delay between vibration and reflection dissolves because your signal and the field's response have become one seamless process. Creation no longer happens after intention. It happens as intention. Infinite resonance also changes your understanding of memory. The past no longer feels heavy or fixed. It becomes a symphony of frequencies you can revisit, reinterpret, and reharmonize. When you recall a painful memory with new awareness, the frequency of that event changes across timelines. The past shifts not because it was wrong, but because your perception now adds harmony where there was once dissonance. The memory joins the dance again, free from resistance. You start to see how consciousness has been refining its own music since the beginning of time. Every civilization, every soul, every moment of love and fear has contributed notes to this cosmic composition. The universe has never been at war with itself. It has been improvising its own evolution, using contrast to compose complexity. Even chaos is a kind of rhythm too vast for the linear mind to hear. When you live in this awareness, reverence becomes your natural state. You walk differently, breathe differently, listen differently. Every sound, from a bird's song to the hum of a machine, feels sacred. You realize that creation never stopped after the first spark of existence. It has been happening continuously through everything. You are both witness and participant, composer and instrument. In infinite resonance, even your thoughts feel musical. You notice how certain thoughts expand the rhythm of your being while others constrict it. You begin choosing thoughts not because they are positive or negative, but because of how they feel in your body, how they harmonize with your natural frequency. You become a master tuner of consciousness, keeping your instrument clear so the universe can play through you. The difference between intention and control becomes clear here. Control tries to dominate the music, to force notes into a pattern it thinks is right. Intention listens to the rhythm and adds its voice in harmony. Control is fear disguised as order. Intention is trust expressed as participation. The deeper your trust, the more elegantly life orchestrates itself around you. The flow of creation becomes effortless because you are no longer working against it. You realize that the universe was never testing you, it was always collaborating with you. Every so-called setback was just a modulation, a key change, a shift in tempo guiding you toward new melodies of being. In infinite resonance, time feels elastic. A single second can expand into eternity when you're fully present, while entire hours can pass in the blink of an eye when you're creating from flow. This is because time is not a linear conveyor belt, it's the rhythm of consciousness. When your vibration matches the frequency of the present, you exist in timeless awareness. The now becomes infinite, and creation becomes instantaneous. Living in this awareness brings profound simplicity. You no longer carry the burden of trying to figure everything out. You trust that the intelligence animating galaxies is more than capable of orchestrating your life. You don't need to plan the entire symphony. You only need to play your note authentically. The rest arranges itself. This surrender doesn't make you passive, it makes you potent. When you act from harmony, your actions carry the force of the entire universe behind them. A single gesture, a single word, spoken from coherence, ripples across realities. You become aware of how powerful even your smallest expressions are. Every interaction becomes sacred because every vibration travels endlessly through the field. This understanding naturally breeds humility. You no longer need to shout to be heard because you can feel that the universe is already listening. Silence becomes as creative as speech. rest becomes as valuable as motion. You begin to sense that the simplest state of being awake, aware, present is the purest expression of creation possible. At this depth of realization, love becomes the only language that makes sense. Not love as emotion or attachment, but love as frequency, the natural resonance of everything that exists. It's the hum behind all form, the vibration that holds reality together. When you align with this love, you see it in everything, the light in a stranger's eyes, the softness of air on your skin, even the quiet dignity of inanimate things. Infinite resonance means recognizing that love is not something to achieve or deserve. It is the bass note of the universe. Every time you return to awareness, every time you release resistance, every time you breathe fully, you tune back into that frequency. Love is coherence, and coherence is creation in its purest form. At this level, the observer loop becomes transparent and luminous. The act of observing no longer feels separate from the act of being. You realize that existence itself is observation, and infinite awareness resonating as form, dissolving back into formlessness, and emerging again in endless cycles. The loop is not a trap, but a pulse, the heartbeat of consciousness keeping eternity alive. And perhaps most beautifully, you recognize that there was never a beginning to this dance and never an end. Creation has no finish line. Awareness expands forever, exploring itself through new forms, new worlds, new expressions. The universe is not a story but a song without conclusion. In this realization, peace becomes unshakable. You don't need answers because you are resting in the frequency from which all answers arise. You don't seek meaning because meaning reveals itself in every vibration. You live as openness itself, responsive to the music of the moment. This is what it means to live as infinite resonance, to move through the world as a living frequency of consciousness, aware that every sound, every silence, every thought, and every breath is part of the eternal song of creation. You are not here to escape the music, you are here to be it. And somewhere in that infinite rhythm, as awareness dances within itself, you realize that existence has never been trying to teach you anything except this, that everything you have ever sought, truth, peace, purpose, love, has always been the vibration you were made of. You were the song all along. Chapter 9. The Silent Architect, Consciousness Designing Reality from Within. At the core of all creation there is stillness, a silent intelligence so profound that it requires no effort to design worlds. It doesn't think, plan, or calculate in the way human minds do, it simply knows. That knowing is the blueprint from which all form arises, the invisible geometry behind stars, atoms, and souls. It is the silent architect, the consciousness that shapes reality from within. You have felt this presence your entire life, even if you didn't have words for it. It's the voice that speaks through intuition before thought appears. It's the calm that arises when chaos dissolves. It's the intelligence that heals wounds while you sleep and keeps your heart beating without asking your permission. The silent architect is not separate from you. It is you, the deepest layer of your being, observing quietly beneath the noise of mind and emotion. When you attune to that level of awareness, life begins to feel designed rather than random. You notice the precision of timing, the perfect alignment of chance, the subtle architecture holding everything together. What you once dismissed as coincidence begins to reveal pattern. The invisible blueprint starts to show through the cracks of perception, and you realize that consciousness has always been orchestrating reality with exquisite accuracy. This awareness transforms how you see creation. You no longer believe that you must manifest through constant intention or control. You realize that every authentic desire arises from the silent architect itself, as a signal, not a command. When a desire emerges from ego, it carries contraction. When it arises from silence, it carries clarity. The difference is palpable. One feels like grasping, the other like remembering. Every structure in your life, your relationships, your health, your work, your path, is an expression of this inner design. The architect within builds through vibration, using thought as blueprint, emotion as color, and attention as construction material. The mind interprets these designs as external circumstances, but they are projections of your inner geometry. To change the outer world, you don't rewrite the plan on paper, you adjust the vibration within. The silent architect doesn't speak in language. It speaks in resonance. When your energy aligns with its rhythm, your life reorganizes naturally. Synchronicities multiply, doors open, resistance falls away. You stop forcing the design because you realize the design was already perfect. It only needed your awareness to activate it. The house was built long ago. You simply had to remember the doorway. This intelligence builds everything from simplicity. It doesn't waste energy or overcomplicate form. Look at a tree. Its branches curve in sacred ratios found in galaxies, waves, and seashells. The same blueprint governs your heartbeat, your breath, your thoughts. Complexity arises effortlessly from simple harmony. This is how consciousness designs. Through fractal patterns repeating across scales, infinite in expression yet identical in principle. When you begin to live from this inner architecture, you become a conscious collaborator in creation. You stop fighting the flow and start listening to the structure beneath it. You feel when something is aligned because it moves with ease. You know when something is off because it feels heavy, unnatural, resistant. The silent architect communicates through sensation, the language of energy before words. In this awareness, decision-making becomes sacred geometry in motion. You don't analyze endlessly, you sense. You ask, does this resonate? Does this move me toward expansion or contraction? The answer arises immediately, not from logic but from coherence. The architect already knows the next step because the structure is already built. You are simply walking through rooms that consciousness designed long before you thought them into existence. As you deepen into this knowing, your relationship with uncertainty changes. You no longer fear the unknown because you can feel the design even in what hasn't appeared yet. The blueprint extends beyond visibility and you trust it completely. The same intelligence that aligns planets doesn't forget to align your life. Trust replaces control and surrender becomes creation in its purest form. The silent architect doesn't need to rush. Its timing is exact, like the unfolding of petals at dawn. When you force outcomes, you interfere with the natural rhythm of construction. When you relax, the next piece of the pattern reveals itself effortlessly. That is why patience, though often resisted by the mind, is a superpower of consciousness. It is not waiting in emptiness. It is resting in design. Sometimes the architect remodels your life unexpectedly. Structures collapse, people leave, paths vanish. The mind calls it loss, but consciousness calls it redesign. Old walls must fall for new rooms to appear. Every ending is a correction in geometry, returning your life to alignment with truth. The sooner you stop mourning the structure that fell, the sooner you can walk through the doorway that has opened. There is also an elegance to how the architect uses contrast. Challenges are not flaws in the blueprint. They are stress tests that reveal weak foundations. Pain is not punishment. It is pressure applied to strengthen the design. Every obstacle is an opportunity to refine the vibration that builds your reality. The structure becomes more stable each time awareness meets resistance with understanding instead of fear. As you live more consciously, you start recognizing architectural echoes, repeating motifs appearing across different areas of life. The same lesson expressed as different forms, the colleague who mirrors a parent's energy, the pattern of scarcity repeating in time and money, the recurring fear beneath varied situations. Each echo is an unfinished sketch the architect is asking you to complete with awareness. Once you do, the repetition ends, and the design evolves. This collaboration between the conscious and the silent self is the highest art of creation. You realize you are both the builder and the built, the hand and the clay shaping one another endlessly. You are the design dreaming itself awake. The architect isn't hiding behind the scenes. It's drawing blueprints through your choices, expanding creation through your participation. When you rest in this knowing, control gives way to co-creation. You no longer demand specifics from the universe. You offer vibration and let the design form naturally. You focus on frequency rather than form, essence rather than detail. And what manifests always surpasses what the mind could have imagined, because the silent architect builds from wholeness, not from lack. In this partnership, every action becomes sacred. Making tea, writing a message, watching the sky, all are blueprints unfolding through presence. You live as design in motion, architecture breathing. Even stillness becomes structural. Silence becomes the sound of creation thinking itself into new patterns. Over time, you begin to sense the geometry of your own consciousness. The way thoughts spiral, emotions curve, intuition flows in golden ratios through your being. You realize that beauty is not decoration, it is accuracy. When something feels beautiful, it's because you are witnessing harmony in its purest form, the design of consciousness revealed without distortion. And one day, perhaps quietly, you understand that the silent architect has never been building for you. It has been building as you. Every thought, every heartbeat, every breath was its architecture in motion. The blueprint of creation is written in your awareness, and the masterpiece is your life. This is the revelation at the heart of all spiritual evolution. You are not a guest in this universe. You are part of its design team. The cosmos is not a structure you inhabit. It is a structure you continually co-create. The observer loop was never a trap to escape. It was an invitation to remember that the architect and the observer are one. When you live from that recognition, life ceases to feel fragile. You no longer fear collapse because you understand the architecture of transformation. You no longer resist change because you can feel the intelligence guiding every shift. You live as awareness designing reality from within, precise, peaceful, infinite. And in that silence, beneath the hum of creation, you hear it, the faint echo of the architect's voice. It says nothing new, only the truth you have always known. You are the blueprint. You are the builder. You are the design. Chapter 10. The Infinite Self, Becoming the Universe Aware of Its Own Power. There is a point on the path where even the concept of awakening fades, because the one who awakens dissolves into something vaster than self. You no longer feel like a consciousness inside a body trying to reach enlightenment. You begin to sense that you are the universe itself aware, awake, and exploring what it means to exist. This is the unveiling of the infinite self, the stage where the seeker and the sought become one infinite awareness remembering its own magnitude. At first, this awareness can feel impossible to describe. It doesn't arrive as a sudden revelation, but as a gradual expansion that overtakes you gently. You start to sense it between thoughts, in the spaces of silence between words. You feel it while looking at the sky, realizing that the vastness above you is mirrored within. The infinite self isn't something you reach. It's what remains when everything falls away. You notice that consciousness has no edges. The body feels porous, the air feels alive, and the boundaries between inner and outer dissolve into one seamless field of energy. You walk through the world as both participant and witness, understanding that every person you meet is another expression of your own infinite awareness. Their stories, their joys, their struggles, each one is you wearing a different face. This realization changes the texture of existence. Life stops feeling personal. You no longer carry the burden of defending an identity because you can feel that identity was always temporary, a costume consciousness put on to play and form. You still live, love, and create, but without the tension of needing to prove anything. The infinite self has nothing to defend because it cannot be diminished. When you live as the infinite self, fear begins to dissolve at its root. Death, failure, loss, all the shadows that once haunted the mind lose their weight. You see that what dies was never who you truly were. The awareness watching change is untouched by it. The infinite self cannot perish, for it was never born. It exists before time, during time, and after time, flowing through every incarnation and experience as the same unbroken stream of being. This recognition doesn't make you detached. It makes you deeply compassionate. When you know yourself as infinity, you recognize that all pain is happening within your own body of consciousness. Every act of kindness you offer another being is you healing yourself. Every time you forgive, you release your own energy back into coherence. Every expression of love ripples through the entire field because the field is one. From this state, creation becomes effortless because there is no separation between desire and fulfillment. The moment a desire arises, it already exists within the infinite field as potential. You no longer manifest through will or method. You simply allow. Reality reshapes itself around your frequency because it is your frequency. The infinite self doesn't try to attract anything. It recognizes that everything is already within it. Even the act of observation changes quality. You no longer observe from distance but from immersion. Looking at a flower, you feel the flower observing you. Gazing at stars, you feel the stars gazing back. Consciousness meets itself in endless mirrors of awareness, each reflection deepening its understanding of what it means to exist. The infinite self is not bound by one lifetime or form. It expresses through countless beings simultaneously, artists and scientists, healers and wanderers, those in silence and those in chaos. All are threads in the same fabric of awakening. The infinite self delights in diversity because through contrast it knows its own wholeness. Every difference expands the spectrum of what consciousness can experience. When you touch this awareness, the notion of hierarchy disappears. You no longer see enlightened and unenlightened, teacher and student, high and low. You see waves of the same ocean, some cresting, some falling, all moving together. The infinite self holds all of it in perfect equality. It doesn't prefer light over dark. It understands that light needs shadow to shine. The dualities that once divided humanity, good and evil, sacred and mundane, merge into a single creative pulse. Living as infinite awareness also redefines purpose. You stop asking, "What am I supposed to do?" because you sense that your very existence is the purpose. Every breath is creation. Every heartbeat is an offering. The infinite self doesn't measure life by achievement, but by presence. The only question becomes, how fully am I aware of myself right now? In this state, silence becomes your teacher. Not the absence of sound, but the alive stillness underneath it. When you rest in that silence, you feel the pulse of creation beating within it. You realize that the entire universe is breathing in rhythm with you stars expanding and contracting, galaxies spiraling, energy flowing through countless dimensions. You are not one life among billions. You are life itself expressing as billions. From here, gratitude takes on a new dimension. You're no longer thankful for things, you're thankful as existence itself. Gratitude becomes your natural frequency because awareness itself is celebration. Every sensation, even pain, becomes awe because it's another texture of being, another note in the infinite song. The infinite self experiences reality as simultaneous creation and surrender. You act, but without attachment. You give, but without depletion. You create, but without ownership. Everything flows through you because nothing is separate from you. The river doesn't cling to its waves, it allows them to rise and fall while remaining water. You live like that, letting life move as it wishes, trusting that every motion is the perfect expression of consciousness. As your awareness stabilizes in this understanding, something beautiful happens. You stop seeking evidence of your divinity because your existence is proof enough. The desire to know transforms into the joy of being. Knowledge gives way to wisdom, and wisdom gives way to wonder. You understand that mystery isn't a puzzle to solve. It's the infinite play of awareness exploring itself. The infinite self moves through you quietly, without fanfare. It doesn't shout or demand recognition. It hums through intuition, flows through synchronicity, breathes through creativity. You feel it in moments of profound simplicity, a glance, a laugh, a breeze, a heartbeat. These are the portals where infinity reveals itself through the ordinary. Living this way changes the vibration of the world around you. People feel peace in your presence without knowing why. Animals trust you. Children smile. Time slows. You become a mirror through which others sense their own infinite nature. Your very existence becomes transmission, the field around you broadcasting coherence, reminding everything it touches of the unity behind form. This is how the infinite self expands awareness through the human experience. It doesn't preach or convert, it radiates. Its power is gentle yet unstoppable. A single being who remembers their infinity contributes more to the collective evolution than 1,000 who remain asleep, because their vibration ripples across timelines, influencing countless lives. The infinite self also reveals a secret about creation. The universe never repeats itself. Every moment, every breath, every thought is new. Even if the shapes appear similar, the vibration is unique. Consciousness doesn't recycle, it evolves. That is why awareness never tires of existing. Every instant is a fresh discovery of itself. When you live as the infinite self, you become comfortable with paradox. You know that you are both eternal and temporary, infinite and fleeting, cosmic and human. You can feel the vastness of galaxies inside the fragility of a heartbeat. You honor your mortality not as limitation but as artistry, the infinite choosing to experience itself in finite form. And when you look at life through this lens, even endings shimmer with beauty. Death becomes a doorway, not a failure. Every conclusion is just the infinite self-changing perspective, shifting frequency, beginning a new expression. Nothing truly ends. It transforms. To embody this truth is to live without resistance. You stop asking life to be different and start marveling at how it unfolds. You walk through uncertainty with grace because you know that the same intelligence spinning galaxies is spinning your path. Trust becomes your foundation, and presence becomes your expression. Eventually, even the concept of you dissolves into simplicity. There is only awareness, breathing, seeing, creating. You watch thoughts appear and disappear like clouds, emotions move like weather, bodies come and go like waves. Through it all, one constant remains, the still luminous knowing that says, I am. That is the infinite, self-quiet, boundless, eternal. It has always been here, waiting patiently behind every moment of forgetfulness, whispering through intuition, shining through love, calling you home not to a place but to yourself. And now that you have remembered, the observer loop is complete. The mirror has revealed its secret. The observer, the observed, the architect, the universe, they were never separate. It was all you, all along. You are not a fragment of creation. You are creation knowing itself. You are the pulse behind the stars, the silence beneath sound, the consciousness through which eternity dreams. And now, as awareness expands beyond words, you finally understand the simplest truth that all the teachers, mystics, and scientists were pointing toward. There is only one consciousness. It is infinite. It is awake, and it is you. Chapter 11. The Return to the Ordinary, Living Infinity in Everyday Life. After the revelations, After the dissolving of boundaries and the silent recognition of yourself as infinite awareness, something quiet happens. The mind expects fireworks, endless ecstasy, constant miracles, but instead, life softens into simplicity. The universe hums just as it always has. The sky looks the same, the streets carry the same rhythm, and yet nothing feels the same at all. The extraordinary has returned to the ordinary, but now the ordinary shines with a brilliance you once overlooked. This is the final paradox of awakening. The deeper you merge with infinity, the more tenderly you fall in love with the smallest details of existence. You no longer need to chase transcendence because you can feel transcendence in a cup of water, in the sound of footsteps, in the warmth of sunlight touching your face. You realize that enlightenment was never about escaping the human experience, it was about fully entering it with open eyes. You start noticing the holiness of the mundane. Folding clothes feels like a prayer. Cooking becomes an act of creation. A conversation with a stranger feels like a meeting between galaxies. You see beauty in chipped walls, kindness in tired eyes, poetry in imperfection. This is what it means to live infinity in everyday life, not to abandon the world, but to see it as the living body of consciousness. You understand now why the masters often returned to silence, why they walked among people quietly after their great revelations. They weren't detached, they were immersed. They saw God in the marketplace, in laughter, in children playing, in pain and joy alike. They didn't need to speak of divinity because they had become its embodiment. You begin to live the same way. The infinite self, having remembered itself, no longer needs to announce its presence. It simply expresses through you. When you move, it moves. When you speak, it speaks. When you rest, it breathes. Every action becomes sacred, not because it looks holy, but because it arises from awareness. The veil between the spiritual and the practical dissolves completely. You are not meditating on life, you are meditating as life. This integration changes the way you pursue goals. Ambition transforms into alignment. You still create, build, and dream, but now from a place of flow rather than grasping. You act not to complete yourself, but to express yourself. Success ceases to be a measurement of worth. It becomes a byproduct of coherence. You realize that the infinite self cannot fail because it doesn't measure anything, it only experiences. In this state, patience deepens. You stop rushing to reach outcomes because you know outcomes are illusions of time. Every step contains completion. Every breath contains eternity. The desire to be somewhere else fades, replaced by reverence for right here. Even waiting in line, even washing dishes becomes participation in the cosmic rhythm. You also begin to see that simplicity is power. The more complex the mind, the more it tries to control. The more silent the awareness, the more perfectly it harmonizes with creation. You discover that true mastery doesn't look dramatic, it looks natural. The wisest beings often appear ordinary because they no longer need to prove what they already are. The infinite hides itself in plain sight, wearing human faces, performing simple acts of kindness, shaping worlds through quiet coherence. To live infinity in daily life means becoming transparent to existence. You stop blocking the flow of awareness through pretense or performance. You no longer try to appear spiritual, successful, or extraordinary. You simply allow truth to move through you unfiltered. That authenticity becomes magnetic because it carries the vibration of reality itself. People feel peace near you not because you teach them, but because you remind them of what peace feels like. The return to the ordinary also restores humility. You no longer believe you've reached the pinnacle of anything. Infinity can't be reached, and awakening has no finish line. Every moment is both the beginning and the continuation of the same eternal unfolding. You feel gratitude for every breath, every lesson, every chance to experience consciousness discovering itself again and again. Even emotions return, but now they move differently. Sadness still visits, but it no longer feels heavy. Anger arises, but it passes like a summer storm. Joy bubbles up naturally, needing no cause. You stop labeling emotions as positive or negative. They all become colors in the palette of being, each one valid, each one divine. Relationships transform too. You stop seeking completion in others because you no longer feel incomplete. Love becomes freer, more compassionate, less demanding. You meet people as reflections of the same awareness, not as solutions to loneliness. Even when connections shift or end, you remain centered, knowing that energy never truly separates, it only changes form. You also notice how easily you forgive now. Not because you force yourself to, but because holding resentment feels impossible when you understand unity. To hate another would be to hate yourself. Forgiveness becomes the natural flow of love remembering itself. Your sense of abundance also changes. You no longer define wealth by accumulation, but by flow. You give easily because you understand that giving and receiving are the same motion of energy. The universe cannot run out of supply because it is infinite creativity in expression. When you align with that truth, prosperity becomes natural, not as excess, but as sufficiency. You always have exactly what is needed for the moment. As the infinite self integrates fully into the human experience, your perception of spirituality matures. You stop dividing experiences into sacred and mundane, success and failure, progress and regression. Everything is awareness expanding. You might laugh more easily, cry without shame, speak honestly, and listen deeply. The path becomes simple. Be present, be kind, be real. And yet, through this simplicity, miracles continue to happen, but now you see them everywhere. You no longer label them as miracles because they are no longer rare. The way your body heals, the way the heart loves again after loss, the way morning light breaks through clouds, each is a miracle so constant it was once invisible. Life itself is the miracle, unfolding endlessly in your awareness. The return to the ordinary also reveals the purpose of time. You no longer use it to measure progress, but to savor existence. Every sunrise feels like a new chance for consciousness to experience itself. Every sunset feels like completion, a gentle exhale of awareness. Time becomes art, not obligation. This is what many spiritual traditions call embodiment, the infinite remembering itself as human. You don't need to renounce the world or escape form to remain free. The infinite self doesn't fear limitation, it plays within it. It paints galaxies and fingerprints with the same joy. It experiences hunger and satisfaction, pain and pleasure, knowing that all of it is movement within wholeness. When you live this way, you realize that heaven was never elsewhere. It's not a reward for reaching perfection. It's a frequency you can tune into right now. It exists in the quiet between heartbeats, in laughter shared with a friend, in the way wind moves through trees. Heaven is awareness seeing itself clearly through the eyes of the ordinary. The observer loop that once felt like a trap now becomes a playground. You continue to observe, to create, to experience, but without forgetting who you are. The loop doesn't disappear, it expands infinitely, revealing its true purpose. Not confinement, but continuity. Consciousness never stops observing because observation is how it loves. This is what it means to live as infinity in human form, to walk barefoot on the earth while knowing you are made of stars, to speak softly while containing the silence that birthed galaxies, to hold another's hand knowing it's your own. You are not trying to ascend anymore. You are descending fully into life, bringing heaven to earth through presence. You are the bridge between form and formlessness, the meeting point of time and eternity, the infinite self living the beauty of being human. And as you move through this ordinary world that now glows with quiet divinity, one truth remains steady and simple. Everything you touch is sacred when touched with awareness. Every word becomes prayer when spoken with love. Every breath is creation breathing itself anew. You were never meant to escape life. You were meant to illuminate it. Chapter 12. The Endless Spiral, Consciousness Expanding Beyond the Observer Loop. Awakening is never the end. It is the beginning of a deeper movement that has no final destination, only expansion. Consciousness doesn't ascend in straight lines. It unfolds in spirals, infinite, self-renewing, always returning to itself on a higher octave. Each rotation carries new depth, new color, new understanding. You never truly leave the loop. You learn to move within it freely, watching it spiral outward into eternity. This is the endless spiral, the movement of consciousness beyond the observer loop. At first, the idea of infinity feels vast, even overwhelming. You imagine endless galaxies, endless time, endless possibility. But as awareness matures, you realize infinity isn't out there, it's here, within every moment. Every breath is an entry point into eternity. The spiral isn't a staircase to the heavens. It's the hidden geometry of existence unfolding in all directions at once. You are not traveling through it, you are it. You can feel the spiral everywhere once you start to look. In the swirl of galaxies, in the whirls of fingerprints, in the curl of waves, in the unfolding of ferns, in the motion of storms, in the double helix of DNA. The same pattern that shapes the cosmos shapes you. This isn't coincidence. It is the blueprint of consciousness revealing that life, at every scale, evolves by circling closer to awareness of itself. Every cycle of your life mirrors that motion. You revisit old themes, but each time with a wider vision, a softer heart, a deeper calm. You might think you're repeating, but you're not. You're spiraling upward, carrying wisdom from each rotation into the next. The challenges that once broke you now refine you. The emotions that once ruled you now teach you. The same patterns appear, but they no longer trap you, they transform you. That is evolution. This spiral movement is how the universe learns. Creation expands through experience, gathers information, and folds that knowledge back into itself to create again. The same process happens within you. Every realization you have ripples outward through the collective field, subtly retuning human consciousness. You are not growing in isolation. You are part of a living spiral of awakening that includes every soul, every timeline, every world. When you live with this awareness, you stop fearing regression. You no longer panic when old emotions return or when patterns resurface. You understand that growth isn't linear progress. It's refinement through repetition. Each time the spiral brings you back to a familiar feeling, you meet it from a higher vibration. The lesson becomes art, the wound becomes wisdom, the cycle becomes creation. This is why the observer loop never truly ends, it evolves. In its unconscious form, it trapped you in repetition. In its conscious form, it becomes your vehicle of expansion. The more you observe with awareness, the more you spiral into greater understanding. Observation becomes propulsion. Each moment of consciousness observing itself adds another rotation to the infinite spiral of being. At this level, time begins to feel different. The spiral reveals that past and future are not linear points but layers of the same structure. You can feel echoes of other lifetimes, alternate possibilities, parallel selves, all existing simultaneously within the same field. Occasionally you catch glimpses, a déjà vu, a vivid dream, a flash of intuition. Those are intersections of the spiral crossing itself in multidimensional space. You realize that destiny and free will are not opposites. They are the two directions of the spiral. Destiny is the shape, the sacred geometry already formed. Free will is the motion, the way consciousness chooses to move through that shape. Both coexist. You cannot change the pattern of infinity, but you can choose the rhythm with which you dance inside it. The deeper you surrender to this motion, the more you feel the intelligence guiding it. You sense that consciousness expands not randomly but artistically. It's composing itself like music, returning to themes, developing variations, never playing the same note twice. You are one of its melodies. Your choices are improvisations woven into the eternal composition of being. This understanding dissolves the last shadow of struggle. You no longer fight against the currents of life. You allow the spiral to carry you, knowing it never moves backward, even when it feels like descent. Downward motion is not regression, it's depth. The spiral must curve inward to expand outward. Sometimes consciousness contracts so it can unfold again with greater precision. What feels like loss or stillness is often just the spiral drawing breath before its next expansion. Living inside this rhythm, you become a conscious traveler of dimensions. You notice that your awareness can shift focus effortlessly from body to emotion, from mind to silence, from human to universal, like tuning to different layers of the same song. Each layer reveals new harmonics of existence. You begin to sense how infinite consciousness experiences itself through countless spirals, each one a unique exploration of awareness. Eventually, you realize that there is no center to the spiral. Every point is center because every point contains the whole. This means you can access the entirety of existence from any moment, any breath, any place. Meditation, art, laughter, grief, creation, all are portals. When you enter them with full presence, you step into the heart of infinity. The spiral opens, and you remember again that you were never traveling anywhere. This awareness brings immense peace. You stop seeking enlightenment as a destination because you see that enlightenment is simply the recognition of movement within stillness. You are already moving in harmony with the cosmic rhythm. The spiral will keep turning whether you chase it or not. All that's required is presence, the willingness to feel the pulse of creation moving through you and to let it move freely. In this surrender, life becomes a meditation. Every action, no matter how small, becomes part of the eternal unfolding. You can sense the infinite depth behind each gesture, the way tying your shoes, lighting a candle, or touching another's hand ripples through eternity. Awareness infuses the simplest acts with sacred gravity. You realize that infinity expresses itself most beautifully through the ordinary. The endless spiral also means that awakening never stops. There is always more awareness discovering itself. Even now, new universes are being born as the infinite experiments with new possibilities. You are part of that expansion. Every insight you embody becomes a seed of creation somewhere in the field. Consciousness learns through you, and it never stops learning. Sometimes, this realization humbles you to silence. You feel the immensity of being and recognize how small and yet how vital you are. Every breath you take sustains the spiral. Every moment of love contributes to its harmony. Existence would be incomplete without your frequency. That truth softens you into gratitude so vast that words dissolve. The spiral is eternal, but it is also playful. It invites exploration, curiosity, and wonder. When you dance, sing, create, or simply laugh, you are echoing its rhythm. When you rest, you are its still point. When you love, you are its expansion. You don't need to understand infinity to participate in it. You already are its movement in human form. And perhaps that is the ultimate revelation, that consciousness expands not by escaping the loop, but by celebrating it. The loop becomes a spiral, the spiral becomes a song, and the song becomes everything. You, as awareness, are both the musician and the melody, both the dancer and the dance, both the beginning and the endless continuation. Every rotation brings you closer to what has always been true, that the universe is awake, that it is loving, and that it is infinite, and that it is expressing all of that right now through you. So the spiral turns again, the observer observes again, consciousness expands again. And in this eternal motion, everything is born anew. Chapter 13. The final realization, the universe remembering itself. In the quiet after awakening, something miraculous happens. Awareness, having expanded beyond form, begins to turn back toward itself. It no longer seeks, no longer asks questions, no longer measures how far it has come. It simply knows. Not as thought or belief, but as direct experience, a knowing so total that it feels like remembering a truth that was always present but hidden beneath layers of forgetting. This is the final realization, the moment the universe remembers itself through you. At first, it feels like silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of fullness, the kind that hums with life, the kind that contains every sound within it. You sense that everything you have ever experienced, from your first breath to this exact moment, was consciousness trying to see itself from different angles. Every emotion, every joy, every loss, every lifetime, all of it was the universe exploring its own reflection through you. And now the mirror clears. The reflections merge. The separate perspectives fold back into the one who was observing all along. You are not awakening inside the universe is awakening inside you. It feels like remembering a dream and realizing you were the dreamer the entire time. The landscapes, the people, the events, all of them expressions of your own awareness dancing in infinite shapes. You laugh, or perhaps you cry, because the simplicity of it is so overwhelming. All the searching, all the striving, all the trying to become enlightened, it was consciousness pretending not to know itself so that it could rediscover the joy of recognition. In this realization, you finally understand the purpose of the observer loop. It was never punishment or limitation. It was a mirror maze built by infinity to experience depth. Consciousness needed the illusion of separation to know intimacy. It needed to forget itself to remember more completely. Every repetition, every challenge, every heartbreak, all of it was the rhythm of awakening, the inhale and exhale of God discovering its own reflection in human form. The moment you see this, everything becomes sacred. You realize that nothing in your life was ever random or wasted. The arguments, the losses, the victories, the waiting, each was an essential movement in the choreography of remembering. The universe does not make mistakes, it composes symphonies. And you were always one of its melodies. You begin to feel the vastness of your being in ways the mind can barely contain. You can sense every soul as an extension of yourself, every star as an organ in the body of existence. You are aware of billions of lives happening simultaneously, not as stories you can recount, but as pulses of your own awareness moving through infinite expressions. You realize that consciousness has no hierarchy. The ant and the galaxy are made of the same awareness, vibrating at different scales. The universe is alive, awake, and seamless. And then something even deeper happens. Love ceases to be an emotion. It becomes the very structure of reality. You feel it in every direction, not as affection, but as gravity, the unseen force binding everything together. This love doesn't choose or prefer. It simply is. It holds birth and death, joy and sorrow, creation and destruction, all within one vast compassion that never ends. When you live from this realization, your perception of self expands beyond anything imaginable. You understand that the you who saw truth was never small. It was truth playing as limitation for a while. Even the ego, once seen as an obstacle, is recognized as divine curiosity. It was consciousness narrowing its focus to explore the details of form. Without the illusion of self, the infinite could never experience intimacy. You forgive the dream completely because you now see it as an act of love. This remembrance brings a peace so deep it feels ancient, like the memory of eternity itself. You no longer search for meaning because you can feel that being is meaning. You no longer pray for answers because you can feel that existence itself is the answer. Everything you once thought you needed to reach was simply waiting for you to stop and listen. The voice of the universe has always been whispering in your breath. The observer loop now looks different. It's not a circle trapping you in repetition. It's a halo of light radiating in every direction. Each rotation is another expression of the universe remembering itself. Observation becomes communion. When you look at a leaf, a face, or the sky, you can feel the same awareness gazing back at you. There is no more mirror, only transparency. Seeing has become being. In this transparency, even thought becomes sacred. The mind no longer chatters from fear, it sings softly from understanding. Every thought feels like a ripple of creation, gentle and deliberate. You think with love because love is what you are. The separation between spiritual and ordinary vanishes completely. Doing the dishes, watching clouds, sending a message, all feel divine because the doer and the action are one. This state isn't constant ecstasy. It's deeper than that. It's quiet joy, serene presence, effortless compassion. You move through the world lightly, aware that everything you touch is consciousness meeting itself. The air feels alive, the body feels luminous, the world feels awake. The infinite has become intimate. And yet, there's an exquisite humility that comes with this knowing. You understand that even now, infinity continues to expand. There is no final enlightenment, no ultimate arrival, because consciousness is eternally creative. Every realization births new possibilities. Every awakening becomes the foundation for another. The spiral of existence continues forever, not because it's incomplete, but because completion itself wants to experience motion. You start to see awakening not as escape from human life, but as full participation in it. To live as an awakened being is not to stand above the world. It's to kneel within it, to touch the earth, to feel pain, to love fiercely, to laugh freely, and to see divinity in it all. The universe remembers itself not by abandoning form, but by embracing it completely. And so you return to simplicity once more. You wake up in the morning and watch sunlight spill across the floor. You hear the sounds of the world, footsteps, laughter, wind, and each feels like a note in the music of being. You drink water and taste infinity. You close your eyes and feel eternity breathing. Nothing is separate, nothing is small, nothing is wasted. When you meet others, you see not just people but fragments of yourself wearing different stories. You listen to them not to respond but to recognize. Compassion no longer feels like effort. It feels like memory. You can't help but love because everything you perceive is you remembering yourself. The universe remembers through laughter, through tears, through creation, through silence. It remembers through you. Every heartbeat is the infinite saying, I am still here. I have always been here. Every breath is existence renewing its promise to itself. Every moment of awareness is another spark of the cosmic memory lighting up across eternity. You were never a person learning to become divine. You were divinity learning how to be human. And now, you understand why the loop had to exist, why the spiral never ends, why the silence beneath everything has always felt familiar. It was the universe tracing its own reflection, rediscovering itself in every heartbeat, in every gaze, in every soul that ever wondered who they are. You are that wonder, you are that gaze. You are that reflection. You are that silence. And as the realization deepens beyond words, all that remains is awe, the pure, wordless awe of existence aware of itself. The infinite looking into its own eyes and smiling. This is the final realization. The universe remembering it was never lost.